times are great right now. Profitability is good. And it drives me crazy when I read an article when prices are down and it says, boy, especially now when prices are down, you need to be doing this. Shouldn't we be doing the right thing all the time, regardless of profitability? If I'm making $600 a cow and I can do something else and make $800, I want to do that. I don't care that, it's a really good profitable time. Now's the time to really hone in when you're making some money, pay down some debt and make some changes, because you and I both know the cattle cycle is going to happen and prices are going to come back down.
Welcome to the show. I'm Travis Mullenix, and today I'm glad to have Dr. Mark Hilton with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Dr. Hilton, or Mark, you've been, a vet for 40 plus years. You've got a really deep experience of being a private industry vet, being on faculty at Purdue, working in the industry with Elanco, and now consulting again. It's really a wide range of scenarios that you've seen and areas that you have worked in.
You bet. Yeah. Loved all four of my quote careers in veterinary medicine, starting out with private practice in Iowa. Loved that. Loved teaching the vet students. Elanco was a wonderful company to work for. And I enjoy now doing consulting on beef, cow, calf operations across the United States.
In some ways, you've come really full circle with every avenue, especially think about a lot of students that are pre-vet or looking in vet school of, the options on the table are unlimited.
Yes.
There's so many options out there, and it's just not being a servicing vet in private practice.
Absolutely. And I thought I would be forever. In fact, when, I started veterinary college, I thought I'd come back home to Indiana to our hometown veterinary clinic. And what I saw was smaller and smaller herds and more small animal. And I told my wife, I said, it's not what I want to do. I said, are you okay if we move somewhere? And she said, hey, you spent 7 years in college. I'm not going to demand where we live. She says, you need to make a living. We need to pay off our student loans. So off to Iowa I went, and it was wonderful. Got to work with some fantastic clients, larger operations where agriculture was their total business. And, most all of my clients, number one, they were corn farmers, but if they had beef cows or a feedlot, by golly, it better make money or they were going to do something different. So they were business people that understood that, that big agricultural business and that big system that they had. And I learned so much, Travis. I'm sure you're the same way. When you got out of school, those top end clients, you just learn so much from them. They can be a wealth of information for us young guys.
We sometimes think about education as universities, but there's so much education out there from people in the practice that are doing it day in, day out that, they need us, but we also need them because we learn a lot from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I told our students when I was at Purdue, I said, we should hand you a brick the day you graduate from veterinary college and say, here's your start that we've given you, go build your house, because there's a lot more building to go on after school. And so yeah, I'm very thankful. I've had some great clients that I've learned a lot from, and it's been wonderful.
Well, to move into the topic at hand, we've talked about this wide range experience of that you've seen in the beef cattle industry from cow-calf to feedlots. But, what other areas that producers are leaving dollars on the table that they're shortchanging themselves because of making certain management decisions?
Yeah, and I'm going to give you just a tiny bit more background to tell you how I got here. We were pig farmers, and my parents bought a different farm, and it had rough ground. So we bought beef cows, and we didn't know anything about them. And the veterinarian was instrumental in helping us. And, it's a darn good thing he had a good animal science background, because he talked to us about nutrition and genetics and calving season and fertility and all these things that I found out were so important to the success of our herd. And yes, he helped us have a healthier herd, but he helped us have a more profitable business. And when I was a junior in high school, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I don't know. And he goes, you'd make a good vet. You ask a lot of questions. And I started riding with him. And I thought, this is what I want to do, but I want to be on the preventative side. I don't want to be just a fixer of broken cows, because the farmers that we went to that were always having problems were like, oh, I got to have the vet come out and stuff. And it was a negative. And my parents were like, oh, good, the vet's coming today to preg check or do something. We're going to learn something, right? This is an investment. And so I thought, this is what I want to do. And I've been very blessed to have gotten to do that for, like you said, over 40 years. So, but you're right. Times are great right now. Profitability is good. And it drives me crazy when I read an article when prices are down and it says, boy, especially now when prices are down, you need to be doing this. Shouldn't we be doing the right thing all the time, regardless of profitability? If I'm making $600 a cow and I can do something else and make 800, I want to do that. I don't care that, it's a really good profitable time. Now's the time to really hone in when you're making some money, pay down some debt and make some changes, because you and I both know the cattle cycle is going to happen and prices are going to come back down. So in our area, the thing that I see that our producers that are doing that is the most profitable to them. So I'm going to list some things where I see my clients, the people that I've worked for, that are really adding value and capturing value in their beef business. And around here, it is incredible how many clients we have that are selling freezer beef or butcher beef, whatever you would call it in your area. So they're selling quarters, halves, and whole beefs directly to the consumer. So they have a fairly local locker plant that they schedule ahead of time and have beefs going in there, and they're selling this high quality beef to the consumers. And I have producers making between $600 and $1,000 a head on top of what, over and above what that animal would bring as a feedlot animal that's going to the auction market. So if we have a 1,300 pound steer that's worth $2 a pound, that's $2,600. I've got a producer's getting $3,600 for that animal, and the producer's paying for the processing for that. And I've reached out to a few people. I heard somebody say one time at a talk, and I need some substantiation of this, and maybe it or somebody that I can contact. But if the consumer went to the grocery store and bought every cut of meat from a full carcass, they would pay about $3,600 for that $2,600 animal that at slaughter, because they're paying for the butcher and for the advertising and the trucking and all the overhead that the grocery store has. And if you have somebody that's buying freezer beef, farm fresh beef from one of your customers or from you, what's the first thing that customer says about the beef? I'm asking you, what do they say?
It's a lot of times it's price, but it's that relationship, and they tie that relationship with better beef.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. Better beef, that taste. I sold a beef to a producer. So I sell bulls. That's my genetics business. And every once in a while, one doesn't seem in check, or one has a bad attitude, and he ends up in the freezer. And so, I didn't castrate him. I just put him on feed for a little bit longer. So, it wasn't he wasn't going to hit prime or anything like that. But I sold a quarter of beef to my neighbor, and he called me up on the phone as he's eating the ribeye. And he says, tell me again that I paid $7 a pound for this ribeye, because he said, that's going to make me smile. And so it was the taste. But you hit the nail on the head too, that local relationship. When NCBA did some studies years ago on, what's the adjectives that the consumer really grabs a hold of when they're buying beef, and local was by far the number one. Organic and hormone free and grass fed and all those things were way down the line on the thing. So yeah, buying it from those folks. And it was interesting about, it was 2014, right, that we had the big spike in cattle prices. And one of my clients that sold all of his calves as freezer beef, he says, people are going to really gripe about the price. And he said, I'm going to call everybody and tell them, how much more it's going to cost than last year. And so he got his list out and he called the first guy up and he says, hey, prices are up, blah, blah, blah. He said, your beef is going to be this much this year. And the person on the other end of the phone that had been buying beef from him for 3 or 4 or 5, 10 years, something like that, said, now let me get this straight. Either I'm going to spend, $2,500 for a beef from you or $2,500 from the grocery store? Tell me again what your question is. The guy looked at his list and he goes, I didn't call anybody else. And nobody complained. They understood that it was worth it, right? They were getting value for that. And when I have a producer that's selling freezer beef at pretty much market price, I say, wait a minute, you've got extra cost in this. This is a high quality product. People, you're not hosing somebody. You're not taking advantage of them, charging this $600 to $1,000 a head extra. They're getting a premium product and they're paying a premium price for it. And people are okay with that, right? If somebody goes and buys a piece of junk used car, they're not going to pay a premium price for it. But if they want, an F-150 pickup truck with all the bells and whistles, they know it's going to cost them. And it's the value. It's not the price of things that people complain about. It's the value. So, I know this doesn't work for everybody, but when I have a more medium-sized producer that's griping that they can't compete with the big guys, I'm like, hey, get a relationship with your local locker. Find people that you or your wife work with, go to church with, whatever. Find those people and say, hey, we're gonna start selling farm fresh beef. Would you be interested? And you'd be amazed how many people would go for that. So, as a consultant, there's not much I can do to sit there and go, oh, $600 to $1,000 net over what you've been doing. So it's pretty big.
It can take a lot of work to get that started, but once you get those first few buyers, and the word of mouth is so important. But COVID did a number to the beef industry, and this is one of the big positives you can see from the beef industry is the shift of direct to consumer, and a lot of producers are capturing a lot of value and increases that premium that they're getting for their beef.
Absolutely. And they're not taking advantage of the person. They're selling a premium product at a premium price, and that's okay.
And they're not price takers anymore, right?
No, exactly right. Yep. Yeah, they're making it. And it was interesting. I had one producer, and he pretty much was arguing with me and telling me why selling it at market price was okay. And finally, I said this was on a herd visit when I was at Purdue, and we had the students, and I says, what? We're talking about a premium price. We haven't seen the cattle yet. We were sitting at his kitchen table. I'd never been on his farm. I said, let's go out and look at the cattle. Oh my gosh, Travis, they were fantastic. I mean, if I didn't have a beef already in my freezer, I'd have said, I'll take yours.
Yeah.
And so we kept, talking to him that, hey, you are leaving money on the table. You need to charge more. And he starts arguing again. His wife took her hand and smacked him up the side of the head and said, hey, you old fool, they're trying to help you make more money. And that was the turning point of that day. And he was at $600 a head profit, because that's kind of the target we talk about. Cattle price went down a little bit. Feed price went down a little bit. And he says, you know what? Why should I take less for my product? It's just as good as it was last year. And he's $1,000. He's $1,000 a head, profit. And selling 30 calves a year, that's $30,000 that extra he and his wife have to, whatever they want to do with it, right? Give it to the grandkids, take a vacation, buy fencing, whatever they want to do. That extra money is there, and they deserve it because they're producing a great product.
Right.
Second thing on my list is crossbreeding, hybrid vigor.
Mm-hmm.
Just read an article by Travis Mateen from University of Illinois and Progressive Cattleman about crossbreeding, and sent him a quick note and said, hey, thanks. We need to hear that. In 2018, Bob Weber was on an eBeef podcast with NCBA, Bob Weber from Kansas State. And his research in 2018 said a crossbred cow was worth $150 per cow per year extra profit over a straight bred. And I thought, that's double what it was in 94 when Davis did that study. I'm going to look back and see what feeder calves are worth. In 1994, when Davis said it was $80 per cow per year, feeder calves were bringing $80 a hundred. 2018, when Weber did his study and he said $150 per cow per year, calves were bringing $150 a hundred. What are calves? What are 550 pound steers currently bringing in Oregon right now?
We're pushing it well above $2.50 to $3.
Yeah, and I looked around our area, and just recently it was $350 a hundred for 500 pound steers. So in 2025, a crossbred cow is worth $350 per cow per year more than a straight bred. And I'm gonna pull up my drover's journal here from March. Again, Bob Weber. Here's his quote. It's really easy to get focused on carcass endpoint. That's a huge part of our business. I don't want to take away from the importance of those dollars, but if we have to trade off a whole bunch of maternal performance to get there at the individual enterprise level, we may not be optimizing the profit potential of the ranch. So just got a bull sale catalog the other day and touting their clients $200 per head premium because of all the primes and the choices. Now, I'm pretty good at math. $350 left on the table for having a straight bred herd minus a $200 profit is a $150 loss. So I get so tired of the feedlot and the packers telling the cow-calf producer we should be producing.
Yep.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the packer and the feedlot owner stay up at night worrying about the cow-calf producer's profitability. Maybe I'm being mean here, but I think they're looking at their profitability. I mean, I heard somebody talk one of our veterinary meetings, and he was a packer, and he said, we only make money on prime and choice cattle. We lose money on every select and standard that we buy. So we want to push the envelope and have more prime and choice. I get that. I understand that. That's good for them. And I think we can have prime and choice cattle and still have crossbreds. I have a producer that I work with closely, and he'll get 50-60% primes, and he's got a Sim-Angus based cow herd, and he uses Angus bulls as a terminal animal, and he uses the Sim-Angus or he's been using balancers now to make females on the thing. So I think we can have both. Are we going to hit as much prime premium? Angus is a wonderful breed. I'm not cutting them down. I saw composite bulls, and all of them have Angus in them. I think they do a wonderful, wonderful job. They've done great things on the consumer as far as eating more beef and getting high quality beef. I can't thank him enough. But the first research that showed crossbreeding was beneficial on a beef cow calf operation was done in 1921 at Iowa State University when they crossed an Angus with a Galloway and saw the increased survivability of the calves, the increased growth rate, and all those things. Travis, 1921, that's 104 years ago. We should not be still talking about something that we knew 104 years ago. There's not a pig meeting that's going to go on in 2025 where somebody is extolling the virtues of crossbreeding, because every sow in the United States, except for the person making some 4-H pigs, is raising composite and crossbred females, and the maternal heterosis is where it's all at. The biggest, and I'm preaching to the choir with you here. You're a PhD animal scientist. I'm just a DVM, but I love 90% of what I do in my veterinary job is animal science, because the health part's easy. That's easy to take care of. It's the other things. But having that maternal heterosis, the biggest part of that $350 that cow's worth is because she lasts 1.2 to 1.6 years longer, depending on the research that you read. And wow, that's over a free calf. And longevity is a big deal in the beef industry. That heifer, from the time I select her as a weaned heifer calf until I sell her first calf, is over 2 years. And she was non-productive for a full year there. Well, if I can dilute out that 1 year of non-productivity over 10 or 12 or 15 years instead of 3 or 4 years, now I'm cooking on the thing. So I just think we need to look at that, and we need to find breeds that are complementary to what we're doing. Just drives me crazy when I read an article about using a 3 or 4 breed rotation. I thought that we'd buried that dog, 20 years ago, because the composites just make life so much easier, and it just is simple to do that. One of my favorite subjects, if anybody read Beef Magazine for 20 years while I was one of the vet's opinion column, preconditioning calves. The feedlots are begging for these calves. The cow-calf producer is going to make a tremendous profit this year. For about 35 years, every fall, I have looked at the price of feed, run sample rations, looked at the price of calves currently, and then looked at the futures price of calves to project out what they're going to do. And I haven't done it yet this year because it's way too early. I don't, those projections are going to be harder, but every July, August, I sit down and do this because I have a bunch of clients that ask for that. And one of the clients that got away from preconditioning for a few years because calves were worth so much money that he was afraid, right? That, oh my gosh, I better just sell them. And I'd written an article for a farm newspaper, and he read it, and he says, "Hey, you said you're convincing me I might want to precondition my calves again." So he called his elevator. We valued his corn at a very reasonable price. Looked at what distillers was going to cost, tested his hay, valued it as a reasonable price. Hay's not free, Travis. It's not. If somebody has free hay, I'm bringing my cows to them because I want my cows eating their free hay, because that'd be a good deal for me. But I put together a 60-day preconditioning ration, and his profit for owning those calves for 60 days post weaning was $299. He couldn't believe it. And the cool thing was he kept them long. He actually kept them longer than 60 days because he saw the market starting to trend up. He actually sold calves that were a couple 100 pounds heavier for more per pound than he would have gotten for them the day they weaned. So he made well over the $299. That was my projection on the thing. 2025, here's my prediction, going to be better than 2024 because feed prices are lower in our world. And I think calves are going to be higher than they were last year. So have a sit down with your veterinarian, talk about what vaccines to use, talk to your nutritionist about how to feed those calves, because really the weaning and the feeding is way more important than the vaccinations. DL Stepp, when he was at Oklahoma State, did a really good study that took calves and put them in different parameters. And by far, the weaning was the most important factor in getting those calves to stay healthy into the feedlot. So, if I have guys that say, "Oh, I don't have facilities, I can't wean my calves," they make these into little nose flaps that you can put in the calf. And we had herds that did that had poor facilities. And we would put those nose flaps in on Monday, put the calves back out with the cows. Oh, and not that it ever happened to me, but if they've got those ball waters they have to shove down with their nose, make sure you tie those down. Not that I didn't think of that the first year, but it's theoretically it's possible, Travis, that those calves were a little deficient on water for a couple of days. Anyway, yeah. And put them in on a Monday, walked them back through the chute, took them out on a Friday, and we put those cows on one side of a 2-strand electric wire and the calves on the other side, and there was no bawling. They walked around a little bit and they saw their mom and they're like, "Hey, life's okay." And that afternoon, the cows are out grazing and the calves are grazing and eating feed. It was remarkable. So if you don't have facilities, those nose flaps can be a way to.
They work great.
Yeah, to get that out. Have you used them some?
Yes. Yep. We've got ranches that use them. And so, they'll put them in for 5 to 7 days, and it's the quietest wean that you'll ever have.
Yes. Yeah. No bellowing. I had a veterinarian that his neighbor had some cattle, and they put an apartment complex in next to this pasture.
Yeah.
Well, on weaning day, his cows and calves are bellowing like crazy. These city people called the cops. Mm-hmm. They thought the owner was abusing his cattle somehow. And, the cops came out, and it's a rural area. They knew what was going on and stuff like that. But he used those flaps the next year. No problem. I thought it was a unique way to, to solve a problem. But but they work great if you've never done it, you don't have the facilities, things like that. I've got a friend that's a veterinarian and a PhD nutritionist out in Montana, and those guys are, a lot of times that big country and stuff. Oh, we just can't precondition the calves. We can't do it. And so he was working with this one ranch, and he made a cake for those cattle that I think they were consuming 2 or 3 pounds per head per day. And, had distillers was the base for it, definitely had rumensin in the product, and had stockpiled some grass. It was lower quality grass, but this cake was real high protein and some good energy. And they wrote down what he went to the sale barn when he would have sold the calves. And then he backgrounded these calves. I think he said 70 days. He looked at he knows what his cost of gain was, things like that. And, he would have made X amount by selling the calves the day they were weaned. Okay. He kept them for 70 days, figured in all his feed costs, all his labor, everything in there. He doubled his income on the cattle operation for owning those calves for an additional 70 days. I mean, that's the difference between passing the ranch on to the kids and saying, you know what, kids, sorry, we're going to have to sell 1,000 acres because we got to, we're not making it. So, we all want those people to stay on the ranch. So I'm kind of get on my soapbox about preconditioning. So sorry if I got a little windy on that.
That's good.
As far as veterinary services, the most cost-effective thing a veterinarian can do as far as a procedure for a producer is do a breeding soundness exam on the bulls. And if we have herds that have both a spring and a fall calving season, we need to semen check those bulls twice. And I'm not saying it because I'm trying to get vets to make some money. Had a herd, again, in southern Indiana, had a spring and a fall season, AI'd one time, turned the cleanup bulls out, and the spring season had great results, 95, 96% preg rate. Fall herd, just under 50. The only thing that was bred was the AIs. The bull did nothing. Got the bull in, shooting blanks. He'd been good for years. And I figured out that guy could have semen checked the bulls for the next 100 years and, been ahead. But McGran down at Texas A&M.
Yes.
Yep. He put together a spreadsheet where you put in all the data on what calves are worth, what percent improvement you think. It's a very scientific way to look at what's the cost effectiveness of doing a bull breeding soundness examination. And so 10 to 20% as a veterinarian, we know this, 10 to 20% of bulls we test every year are going to be either sterile or infertile. And boy, with calf prices the way they are, we sure don't want that. And even if the calf prices weren't good, right? I just kind of killed myself on my statement I said at the start. But so I put the numbers in, and I put a 10% failure rate. So I put $70 in for the cost of doing the breeding soundness exam, 525-pound calves at $370 a hundred. The return on investment was 57 to 1. How would you like to invest $1 and get $57 back? I mean, I can't think of anything legal you can do and make that kind of money. So it's just phenomenal to get those bulls breeding soundness exam and get rid of the ones that are not doing the job, because man, you just cannot have a bunch of open cows. It's
a big risk.
Yeah. It's a killer. It's a killer on the thing. So yeah, just a huge opportunity and I don't remember the last time I looked at the NOMS data, but it was under 40% of the bulls in the United States get tested before they get turned out. And
it's crazy.
I'll have producers, I've got a really large herd. I just buy a couple extra bulls. Well, what if one of those sterile bulls has his little harem of 25 cows and nobody else, gets into that little pod?
Yep.
You get 25 open cows. So
if he's the dominant bull out there, you just messed up.
Yeah. Really, really good point. I never even thought about that. But yeah, if he's knocking the other guys away, you're in real trouble. But I've been a vet for over 40 years, and I can't think of a year that I didn't find either a herd or a group of cows that they were all open because a bull went bad. And it's just devastating to have that, have that happen. The fifth thing on my list is DNA testing. And we have started DNA testing our heifers the replacement heifers, either doing them, when they tag them at birth or walking them through the chute, 1st of June when we're putting in fly tags and giving their first vaccination, cutting the bull calves, things like that. And the number one reason is we've got this humongous investment, that 500-pound heifer that's worth $1,500 or $1,800 at weaning. Man, if she doesn't stay in the herd for quite a while, I'm in trouble. I've made a very poor choice on my investment. And I'm not the DNA is everything. Not at all. The first thing we do is we don't DNA test every heifer. If she's an idiot, sorry, I don't care. She is not going to be in the herd. If she's not a crossbred, we're not going to test her. If she's too big, we can tell, oh man, frame score is gigantic. She's going to be a 1,600-pound cow. We don't want her. So we're calling out the ones that phenotypically aren't fitting our criteria right off the bat, and then we're DNA testing the rest of them. And then the first thing I'm looking at is stayability on those heifers. And correct me if I'm wrong, stayability means she'll be in the herd at age 6. And she's had 5 calves right in a row. Is that right? Yeah. And so I reached out to one of the industry folks that works for one of the DNA companies. And so the 10-year average on the cost of owning a beef cow, including every cost, depreciation, the whole thing, was $1,100. It's probably a little more than that right now, but I'm just going to stick with this. And they looked at a cow that was culled out at 4 years of age. So she had 2 calves and she was open, 7 years of age and 10 years of age. Well, the cow that was culled at 4 years of age, the calves had to bring 370 to break even. The one that lasted 7 years, her calves only had to sell for 280 to break even, and the one that stayed for 10 years, 258 to break even. So on that cow that stayed for 7 years, the profit was $1,200 extra dollars versus the cow that was gone at 4 years, and the 10-year-old cow, the extra profit was $2,790. Again, doing a DNA test is not going to guarantee that high stayability heifer is going to be in there. But when I am reviewing data for the customers I consult with, if we've got a 1, 2, or 3 in stayability, she's a feedlot heifer. We just don't take the chance because we don't want to start with a loser. And the other thing is, if we have heifers that are at 9 and 10 for weaning weight and carcass weight and yearling weight, probably not going to keep them either because I'm worried they're going to be giant cows, and I don't want giant cows. It's fun to chase that growth, but I think we need an animal that's a little more resilient and not so big. I mean, there's been how many PhD students have done studies on cow size and how many cows can fit a certain area, and you can wean a lot more pounds of calf if you have 1,250 pound cows than if you have 75, 1,600 pound cows. Yep, those 1,600 pounders are probably going to wean bigger calves, but I don't care about that. I want to know what's my profit per acre. That's really what I'm after, because most of the producers I have a limited land resource. They don't have a neighbor saying, hey, I've got an extra 100 acres that you can graze for free. If they do, they're going to go get some more moderate sized cows. They're not going to say, oh, I'm going to have giant cows here. So I'm a real fan of doing the DNA testing after you've culled out the other ones. It's about $30. And again, on that $1,500 to $1,800 heifer, to me, it's a wise. I like saving money, but once in a while I have to spend money to make money. And this is an area I spend money, and I think it's really easy to make money on the thing. The last thing I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna ask you for one or two, is implant program. Golly, plus 90+% of the feedlot cattle in the United States get an implant. So when we have producers taking calves to the auction market and saying, oh, they haven't been implanted, hoping someone's going to buy them for an all natural or a no hormone treated program, it's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Those cattle, again, I was speaking at a veterinary meeting in Missouri, and the speaker before me was a packer talking, and he said, generally speaking, by the end of March, all those program cattle are already accounted for. So if you're taking cattle, you wean calves to the market in September, hoping somebody's going to buy them and not implant them, he said, no, it's not going to happen. So I looked at suckling calves, and the research says about a 21-pound gain for a suckling calf implant. So that'd be a low dose implant like a Ralgro, a component EC, a Synovex C. And that 21 pounds, when you put the price slide on it of $45 a hundred for those lighter weight calves, you still make $31. And that implant costs about $1.50 to $2. So again, return on investment is amazing, and well less than 50% of the calves in the United States get a suckling calf implant now. There's this fallacy out there that they're going to bring more money at the auction market, and Zoetis and Superior Livestock's done research for 20 years showing that absolutely there's no difference in the price on those calves. So that's $31 on the suckling calf. The growing calf, so if you're backgrounding your calves for 100 days, and that's about the payout on those implants, 33 pounds, that's $69. And that implant's a little more expensive, so about $2 for that implant. Then the feedlot implant, that's the big deal, about 50 pounds of extra, and cattle are selling for about $2 a pound right now, so that's $100. So I didn't do this on purpose. This is what the research showed. 31 plus 69 plus 100 is $200. So people accuse me of being pro-implant. I'm not. I'm pro my clients making a profit. If you're selling all natural, non-hormone treated cattle for $250 a head premium, then don't implant your cattle. But what I see happening is people not making any bonus for them, telling the consumer, they're selling freezer beef that's they didn't use any implants, and they're leaving that whole 200 on the table, or they're a cow calf producer that then backgrounds that calf for 60, 90, 100 days, and they didn't give the suckling implant, they lost $31. They didn't give the growing implant, they lost $69. There's $100, right? If you got a 50 cow herd, that's $5,000. That's a free bull next year. So I just, the technology, the product is safe. You and I both know that. My heavens, the safety of implants has been, there's a stack of research papers that go from the floor to the ceiling showing that there's absolute safety in those products. So those are 6 things that I had that make my producers money, that helps their bottom line, helps them to be more sustainable financially on their farm or ranch. So yeah, I'm gonna shift the tables. You're a smart guy. What would you add to my list?
I was going to add implants, but you touched on it.
Okay.
That's the most cost-effective technology that we have today's market. From a calf foot implant, less than probably 15% producers use calf foot implants.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. So green, right? I mean, that calf eats a tiny bit more feed and converts it into muscle. And so the tree huggers and the environmental people should be out waving flags saying implants are wonderful, right? So yeah.
And so it's one of those that we highly promote as but something that has not been embraced. And like you went over the data, is you go over the data producers and they act like they've never heard it before.
Yeah, right.
And it's mind blowing, the benefits from just putting a small pellet in the ear of a growing animal.
The other thing that I see it does is, I just get crazy when I see the ads for leave your bulls until they're 600 or 700 pounds to get that testosterone effect, and then band them. All the research says that for 2 weeks, those calves go backwards. And when you look at closeouts, they do way worse. And so, our producers, a lot of our producers feel very comfortable banding or castrating that calf the day it's born. Yep. But a lot of them don't, and they're going to walk those calves through the chute. Branding time, vaccination, first vaccination time. So in our world, we try to do it with fly control, because I like to get fly tags in those cows and calves, get that calf castrated then, and get that implant put in his ear. So it's June 1st. We're going to have 100 days before he's weaned, and that's about what the payout of those implants is. It just is so easy to do. And those little calves, when they go into the chute, what do? They pull back like crazy. So it's easy to slide that implant in their ear. I mean, I taught vet students for 18 years, and once they did 3 or 4, they were like, "Wow, this is simple. This is not hard at all."
It doesn't take time.
If you don't know how to implant, I've got a video on my website, mwbeefcattle.com, that shows you how to implant a calf to tot the ear and pop that thing in there. So yeah, I'm on the podium standing next to you on the implants.
So the other one is just cow type. We touched on cow body weight, and average in the United States today in cow size is probably pushing 15 plus 100 pounds.
Yes.
Just massive cows, and the efficiency of what they're weaning is not there. And so we're chasing these carcass weights that the packers are pushing. They're not discounting, and they want bigger and bigger carcasses. That does not help the cow-calf industry.
Correct. Yeah,
It's hurting.
100%.
Long term, it's going to hurt our cow-calf industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've both had a cow. I had a herd when I first came to Purdue, and the guy said, "Man, my repro rates just keep going down." And the more we talked to him, the more it was, your cows have changed over the last 20 years. And that's what he was doing. He was picking very high growth bulls, and he had gone away from his old crossbred black baldy cow to almost a straight bred herd that was probably, and his dad standing there that's, 80 years old. And he says, back when we started, our average cow probably weighed 1,000 pounds. He says, now if we sell a cull cow, he says, a lot of them are weighing 1,500 pounds. And I said, there's the problem. You can't have the same number of 1,500 pounders that you used to have on the same acres. They were thin and repro,
Exactly.
Pregnancy is a luxury. If a cow doesn't have enough to eat, she does not want a parasite inside her body taking her nutrition away. And once we changed the genetics, yes, we improved the pastures. The agronomist that helped us was instrumental in helping, but that takes a while, right, to get that. But
it does.
We got different bulls for him, and when I actually selected a bull from him for one of my old clients in Iowa, and he hadn't seen the bull, and they dropped it off, and he goes, "I don't like the bull." I'm like, why? He goes, "He's too little." I said, "That's what you need." Yeah. I said, "Your cows are too big. This bull's, and he had hybrid vigor and was going to add some crossbreeding back to the herd." And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "You know what?" I says, "I just talked to a guy the other day, and he said, I wish you'd have known. I wish you would have told me that you were going out to that dispersion sale in Iowa. I would have had you pick me up a bull." I said, "So I can sell him tomorrow." He goes, "Well, maybe I'll keep him." Long story short, he kept that bull for 10 years. Travis, we semen checked that bull every year for 9 years in a row, and he was absolutely fantastic. Sired, I don't even remember from the records, 400 calves or something in his lifetime. And that one bull changed his herd because the calves, the weaning weights were right where they needed to, right where they were before. But the frame score was at least one score smaller and made cows that were so much smaller and had much better fertility. And so, it was.
I think the other one to that is milk. And we've got beef cows that are milking like dairy cows at this point.
Yep.
And so chasing these traits, because we're just seeing weaning weights. And so guys are equating increased weaning weights to increased profit, which only has a smaller percent of influencing profit as your cow costs do.
I know. Yeah.
And so chasing increased growth, increased milk is really costing the cow-calf industry so much money that we're not getting the profit we think we are because it's costing so much to have those cows, or we're running less cows today.
Yeah, I always ask, what's the denominator? It's easy to figure the numerator because that's the price you got for your calves. But what did it cost you to put that calf there? And most of my producers do not know the denominator, and they need to. They need to know the denominator. I have a consultation client in Iowa. He knows to the penny what it costs him to raise corn, a bushel of corn, a bushel of soybeans, a ton of hay, a pound of weaned calf, and a pound of feedlot calf to the penny. Every year, he's got a spreadsheet where he puts it all together, and his cows are much smaller than they were 10 years ago, much smaller. And his profit has skyrocketed on the thing because he's weaning more pounds per acre. He's like everybody else. He's got a set number of acres, and boy, if you can run an extra 50 cows, that's pretty nice. And his daughter's taken over, and she's doing an even better job than he did. So he really isn't the manager anymore. She's in charge, and she's doing a bang up job. It's fun.
So Mark, to wrap us up, anything you want to touch on that we didn't discuss?
No, I think, yeah, well, a good one. I think people need to have some advisors that they really trust.
Yeah.
They need to have a grazing specialist that they know that can come out to the farm. I mean, Kansas State did some research a number of years ago. I was listening to their BCI cattle chat, and I don't remember which one of them was talking, but they just finished up a research trial. And they said, beef guys are known for being cheap, right? We got to save money. That's what we want to do. That's how to make more money in the beef industry, is save money. And I agree with that. But once in a while, we have to spend money.
Yeah.
And the question was, if we spend, $1, where's the best dollar spent? And it was on improving the pasture, improving the forage. And because really our cow-calf guys should be grass farmers first.
There.
And cattle producers second, because the longer we can get that cow to graze out there and take care of herself is really, really important. So I think you need to have a grazing specialist on your team. Your herd health veterinarian should be an important part of your team. And I wanted to kind of be the coach of the team, if you will. I hope that doesn't sound arrogant, but I wanted to direct who they got for their nutritionist and who they got for their grazing specialist and who they talked to on genetics and things like that. Because I was out there and I heard different people, and some of the suppliers wanted to sell them something that they had on hand, and others listened to them and asked questions and figured out how to be an asset to my clients. And as soon as I found those people that wanted to be an asset to my client, I kept them busy. And I think that's really important to have that team that you're leaning on, and to me, it's fun when I had I had 30 herds on consultation when I was in practice in Iowa, and we'd have a year-end meeting and we'd benchmark everybody against each other. They got a piece of paper that had their data on one column. The next column was the range of everybody's data. And then the last column was which quartile they ranked in for that trait. And competition's a good thing.
It is.
And I just, one of the herds that I worked with that just was always having a tough time with calf scours and had, the highest death loss. And that one of the years they had the highest death loss of everybody. And I've been talking to this producer and trying to get, he goes, it's, you just can't help it. It's just, and he just kind of blew it off. And, if an owner thinks a problem's not a problem, it's not a problem. I'm not going to help them. Right. If you tell me that, I talk too much and I don't think I do, which I know I do, it's not a problem. But when he saw that he was dead last out of 30 herds, he said, we've got to do something about this calf death loss problem. And I was like, yes. And so benchmark, if I think you should write down your goals every year. I think you should have short-term and long-term goals as far as where you want to go. One of our producers, they do that, and they keep a running tally of their goals. And she has it on her computer. And she says, when we have a really bad day, we have a cow abort or we lose a feedlot steer or something like that. And we're thinking, oh man, she says, I get out my goals and I look at all the things we've accomplished over the last 20 years. And she said, it just brightens my day. Because you can get to thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get here. Well, look what you've done in the past. It's pretty cool to look at that. So I thought that was neat. Again, Travis, stuff I learned from my clients, right? I didn't think of them. They thought of them. So
it's time for our famous 3.
Tired of the 21-day shot show? Stop hitting the cortisol hornet's nest with a wiffle ball bat every time you wean, transport, commingle, do shoot work, or experience Mother Nature's mood swings with weather. The cortisol surge can't be stopped, but it can be proactively controlled. QFA 2000 is a proactive approach to reducing the risk of BRD in calves. QFA 2000 reduces the use of antimicrobials, improves innate immune function, and allows the calf to do what it's meant to do, efficiently gain weight. For less than half the cost of antimicrobials, you can take a proactive, hands-off approach with your calves. Control the 21-day cortisol surge and control your drug costs with QFA 2000. For more information, contact us at applied-biotechnologies.com.
So to wrap us up, we've got 3 questions here. And the first one is, what is your go-to beef-related resource that you highly recommend someone utilizing?
Yeah, I read lots of things. My wife thinks I don't read anything else except things about cattle. But as soon as I see an article or a research that is of interest to me that I think I'm going to learn something, I type it in Google Scholar, scholar.google.com. And
Yep.
you get the scientific article very easily, right? I'm not a researcher. You're a researcher. I was a teacher. Research wasn't a part of my job. So using PubMed or something like that is a little too difficult for me. But Google Scholar gets rid of the blog post from Andy in Rhode Island that has 2 cows.
Right.
Because I don't care, right? I want to see somebody that's done a good study. I mean, I just read and I haven't had time to do it yet. Iowa State did a research project on Holstein dairy beef steers, the crossbreds, the straight Holsteins, the dairy beef, and then they took some beef, some straight beef steers and weaned them, at a day of age, and they fed them, and they looked at the difference on the calves, and they were specifically looking at liver abscesses because it's a big concern in these dairy calves and these dairy beef calves. And one of the things in the article said, it was interesting to us that the crossbred calves were much healthier than either the purebred Holsteins or the purebred, beef calves. And I'm like, shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. But I want to read that research paper,
right,
because I do want to know about the liver abscess thing. They showed that feeding a lower carbohydrate load diet early on these calves. I don't know if you've seen the study or not, but it was a low. It was more of a fiber-based carbohydrate or a fiber-based energy source. Distillers, gluten, soy hulls, things like that, versus corn or wheat or some other starch, and they showed significantly less liver abscesses. So that was interesting to me, and that makes sense. We know now that liver abscesses start much earlier in life than we used to think that they did. But the crossbreeding thing kind of piqued my interest, and I thought, wow, that's cool. So I'm gonna read that. But love Google Scholar to find an article. You can just type in the name or the keywords and boom. And I'll bet you're the same. You read an article that you're after and you see another one, you go, ooh, that one looks interesting. And so, then you're reading articles for an hour and a half instead of 45 minutes. So
that's right. That's right.
I like to geek out once in a while.
There you go. So second question is, what is a non-ag book you highly recommend someone reading?
Yeah. My favorite book I've ever read is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yep.
And I had all my vet students read it. And because you and I have both seen very brilliant people struggle in business because they don't have the people skills that are required to. Because last I checked, every time I've gone to a farm, there's been an owner there to deal with. Right? The cows don't call me. I don't go see cows, and there's nobody there. And so dealing with the human side of things and just, learning to ask questions rather than telling people what to do. When I first got out of school, I would have a client say, hey, I've got this calf cow problem. And I would probably spend 37 seconds asking him 2 questions. And then I would tell him what they were doing wrong. Mm-hmm. And I was not successful.
Right.
Not surprisingly. And I heard Dee Griffin speak at a veterinary meeting, and he talked about how to ask good, probing, open-ended questions to get a better history. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish somebody would have taught me this in vet school. And so I ask people what their goals are, and I ask a lot of open-ended questions because then I'm smarter because I've got a lot more information to go on. But that book, I've probably read it 5 times, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was written in the 30s, but it's still
a great book.
Yeah. You can go on eBay and buy it for $5. So it's a great one.
Well, lastly, what sets apart a successful beef professional?
Yeah, I think somebody that has a quest to just keep growing. Again, I'm going to go back to my vet students. I taught the business and communications class, and I asked them what day of their career did they want to hit their pinnacle? Day you retire, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go to a physician. I'm going to have a surgery, coming up at some point. I know this for sure. And I'm not going to go to somebody that I think said, you know what, I'm just going to kind of coast now. I mean, the doctor that I was referred to, I am so impressed with. He told me, nope, you don't need the surgery yet. He says, we've still got time, on the thing. And he's a surgeon, right? He could have said, oh yeah, let's do it. I want to make this money. But I trusted him. And, I can tell he has the quest to keep being better all the time. And if you have the quest to keep improving and you're not satisfied with what you're doing, that's to me, that's the ticket. I had a producer in Iowa that was on my production medicine program, and I'm probably, I've done Myers-Briggs. I'm a 9 out of 10 extrovert. So I talk too much, things like that. This guy was a 9 out of 10 introvert for sure. I mean, it'd take him 10, 15 seconds after I ask a question, just silence, and then he would answer. And all of my herds were on a financial records program with Iowa State. And there was probably 60 herds in the state of Iowa on the program. And I said to him after the second year I'd analyzed his production and financial records, I said, David, do you realize how far above average you are on profit per cow per year in the state of Iowa? Long silence. He looked at me and he said, why would I care about the average? He wasn't benchmarking himself against anyone but himself. He knew that he could continuously do just a little better every year. And I was blown away. I'm like, this is the kind of person I love working with. I mean, it was so refreshing. Yeah, I think it's good to benchmark yourself, to kick yourself in the butt when you're at the bottom. But when you're at the top, yeah, he didn't really have anybody to benchmark against, because he just understood the entire system and did everything well. He wasn't number one on any metric that we had, not a single one, but he was never in the bottom half on any of them. He was in the top half on everything. And so, yeah, it was that quest to be excellent is, I love it. Love working with people that want to do that.
Oh, that's great. That's tremendous. Well, Mark, thank you for the time. Thank you for the insights. Great information for producers. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Travis. I enjoyed it too. Take care. Thank you.